I'm joined now by Senator Sen Coons, a Democrat from Delaware and a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, quite a lot to get to today, but let me start by getting your initial reaction to these reports that the president shared sensitive material with the Russians. I want your overall take.
Well, Hallie, this is very troubling. It suggests, if true, that the president just doesn't appreciate how risky, how dangerous it is to share classified information with one of our main adversaries, Russia, with their foreign minister and their ambassador, specifically about a highly classified, highly sensitive source that has given us critical insights into ISIS, into their planning of potential future attacks against the United States. The story, as reported, suggests that the information that was shared by the president would allow the Russians and their allies, the Assad regime in Syria and Iran, to perhaps shut down this critical intelligence stream to the United States. That could put us at risk.
So do you want to see the transcript or any kind of readout more fully from this meeting from last week?
Of course, and there might also be tapes, but who knows? It has been publicly reported there were transcripts of this specific meeting and then efforts made to clean up after the meeting. I think that should be reviewed promptly by the appropriate committees here in the Senate.
You're on the Foreign Relations Committee, obviously. We just heard from Hans Nichols talking about the reaction from allies. So I have two questions for you. Number one, have you heard from anybody overseas, any of your counterparts so far about this reporting?
No.
Secondly, what do you expect you may hear, and what are you concerned potentially about fallout from this?
Well, I am going to be joining other members of the Foreign Relations Committee in an important meeting later today with a vital ally from the Persian Gulf. I do expect that as the day unfolds, more of my colleagues will be hearing from contacts in other countries. A key part of our counterterrorism intelligence network is information that's shared with us by partners, by allies, and in some cases even by adversaries. This is a vital piece of our national security infrastructure. And this incident, Hallie, just suggests that our president is probably troublingly unfamiliar with exactly what steps need to be taken to protect these vital threads of information.
You talk about national security here. Do you believe President Trump jeopardized our national security?
Well, if true, that would absolutely suggest that he jeopardized our national security. Hallie, one question might be why we aren't believing the White House and the spokespeople who they put out at a very senior level last night to push back forcefully on this story. We only have to go back to last week when, after FBI Director Comey was fired, Sean Spicer and other representatives of the administration up to the vice president asserted vigorously that the reason he was fired was because of a memo by Rod Rosenstein and Comey's mishandling of the Hillary Clinton email situation. By the end of the week, the president himself had disagreed with that story put out by his own White House. I think in this week, we're already seeing a repeat of that same pattern. Very senior leaders of the administration strongly going out there denying a story, which the president on Twitter implicitly confirms almost immediately. Are
you saying you don't believe what the National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, has had to say?
Well, I respect the National Security Advisor, and I'm concerned about
but do you believe him here in this instance?
In his statement, he very carefully parsed what was and wasn't said in the White House meeting. And I think it will undermine his credibility here on the Hill if it turns out that the initial reporting by the Washington Post, now confirmed by several other leading news sources, is in fact true.
The president, though, said, for example, this morning, tweeting that he has an absolute right to share facts pertaining to terrorism and airline safety. As somebody who was at the White House until close to midnight last night, I can tell you that the administration's pushback is that, listen, the president can reveal information, can share discussions about common threats. Why is he not able to do that? Why is that wrong in your view?
He doesn't face legal risk for sharing highly classified information. But historically, when presidents have made a decision like this, they only do so after consulting with the most senior levels of the intelligence and defense community so that he can be given advice on the context, on the potential consequences for our vital allies. The president apparently didn't realize the damage that he might be doing, or if he knew about it, didn't care about the damage he might be doing to an absolutely vital ally who has shared critically sensitive intelligence with us. In the situation in Syria and in the Middle East, and in the very real threat to our security posed by ISIS, that's reckless.
You know, let me go back to something that you said about General McMaster, which was that he risks undermining his own credibility on Capitol Hill. Does this administration overall face a crisis of credibility in your view?
Yes. We've seen too many senior leaders in this administration say things that just weren't true. From the earliest days of the administration, the National Security Advisor, Mike Flynn, who lasted just a few weeks before he had to be fired for making public misstatements, the Attorney General, who had to recuse himself after it was revealed he'd made misstatements about his meetings with the very same ambassador from Russia who was in the meeting in the Oval Office that we're currently talking about. This steady drip, drip, drip of incidents that undermine confidence, both in their ability to stay on message and for the message they deliver to be truthful, I think is beginning to really undermine their confidence, the confidence both that they're held in here in Congress and around the world.
Before I let you go, what can Congress really do here? Your colleagues are calling for more information, these transcripts. Richard Blumenthal thinks the Intel Committee should subpoena tapes or any transcripts. Would you support that? And realistically, do you see that happening? Is that where we're headed here?
We've got a very complex week ahead of us here, Hallie. I do think we need a special counsel. I think it's important that we be reassured that the FBI investigation, that is a counterintelligence investigation, is continuing and is independent and is on a strong footing. We're also anticipating a nomination by the president for a new FBI director, possibly by the end of this week. The president could take an important step towards restoring confidence in the rule of law in the FBI if he names someone who is not an elected politician and is not a partisan, someone with long, significant experience in federal prosecution. That's essential. I also think it's important that we have a bipartisan vote to support this FBI director. All three of these will be unfolding this week, and whether or not the Intelligence Committee promptly calls for a release of this transcript or tapes, I expect we'll see that development as well. I believe they should.
Senator Chris Coons, thank you very much for joining us from Capitol here this hour.